Draw simple, easy.
Well, hello there guys. Today we're going to be drawing a quick, simple, easy picture of Luffy from One Piece. Now we've already done a Luffy picture before, the standard look, so today we're going to do him in his Gear 4th mode. So I want you to go ahead and get yourself pen, pencil, paper, whatever you've got, and draw yourself a great big circle right in the middle of the page. Now there is a lot of variations to Luffy's Gear 4th techniques. The most recent one I think in the comics might have been his Tank Man or something like that. But we're going to do the Pound Man version just because it looks a little bit cooler. It's ever so slightly more still shaped like a human with a massive barrel chest. And that is what this great big circle in the middle of the page is going to be, the chest. So I want you to go and get this big circle of yours towards the middle bottom section. And I'm going to put a center line down slightly off to the right. There's something like so, just to give that a bit of shape. And then what we're going to do is pop his head right up in this top zone here, just sitting on the very top edge. So I'm going to go ahead and create a much smaller circle, really tiny by comparison, right around here, just sitting over the top. That's going to be the top part of Luffy's head. And I'm going to just bring that down to create a bit of a flatter jawline shape, something like so, that points loosely down into a chin, something like this. And I'm going to bring this center line off to the left, just creating a curve that comes down here. If you imagine the body's facing off to the right, but all his attention is going to be slightly over to our left. Now with this face then, if I imagine a center point that's about halfway between the top of the head and the bottom of the chin, that's roughly where I'm going to map in his eyes. I'm going to go straight away and just put one circle right in the middle here. In fact, let's make sure that's all nice and in focus. And you'll notice that this circle, basically, you could almost fit 2 or 3 of them in this zone, but I've just put one right in the middle. And then a very similar thing on this center line, I'm going to stick another one here, just like so. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the eyes for these circles as our main anchor point for filling in some other bits. So I'm going to go ahead and just put in some very simple brow shape. So I've just got a couple notches here, right in the middle either side. And then I'm going to go down. I'm going to swoop up to keep an angry eyebrow line over the top of this side. And then I'm going to do the same here as well. Swoop down, angry line, sweeping back up and away. This line's sweeping up, right out. If you imagine this, I'm just going to over accentuate it just so that you've got that flow. And then on the inside then we get to just pop in a quick nose, which is going to be right up here. It's barely going any lower than this eye line. All the features of his face in this image are quite small, it's all quite far away. And then I'm going to map around this eye to create this area of shadow on the inside. And then this area of shadow right around the outside as well. And I'm just creating this big curving shape that takes up a lot of the space, goes up towards the back. So an area of shadow on the inside, and then this big curving space again, it goes up towards the back like so. Maybe just a couple dots, just to show where he's looking. And then just a couple more lines just in there, just to show all the creases of the forehead as well. Don't worry too much about the detail because it's so small. It's not going to be too much of an issue, but it's just nice to get this out of the way. Now using this center line, I'm just going to draw a little shape over here for one of the ears. And then I'm going to do another similar one over here for another of the ears. And then most of his face is going to be taken up with his mouth, which is very unhappy in this situation. So instead of a great big grin, we're going to start with a great big frown. I'm going to start from around about this bottom part of the zone, and just a slightly curving line that's fairly flat right across the bottom. Now normally we map in really precisely, but with quite a small head we're going to be fine. And I'm going to create a great big circle that's the top of the mouth. So a semicircle just works up from that line we've drawn on there, just like so. And then I'm going to just drag this line down a bit at the edges, down again at the corners. Lovely. And then we'll have a line up here for the teeth, and we'll have a line along the bottom for the teeth as well. A few quick lines just to mark those in, like so. And another line underneath just to show the bottom of the lip, and then a bit of shape around the edges just to show the shape of the face and the mouth. Great. So With the rest of his head, I'm going to take this gap that I've got up here, which is from the halfway point to the top, and half of that distance is going to be the peak of his hair. So just create a shape that just curves back and around like this, up, back and around like this. I'm just going to bring this down towards the ear, like so, and then we're just going to put some hair on top. So what you can do is imagine around this circle, another slightly larger loose circle as well, a bit like an afro or a halo. And this is our guiding circle, just so that when I draw the hair, it all sticks out to roughly the same length. And I'm going to do maybe about 4 spikes of hair up towards the top, and then another 4 going down and around. And it's all curving off in a clockwise direction. So just create a bit of a flow. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect because it's the hair. It's always going to be wisping and changing. But I'm going to create a kind of curving triangle point, like a shark fin, going up here. And then another shark fin point going up round here. Another one that kind of curves a bit more, all the way up round here. Shark fin point again. This is going to be the name of our technique. And then some more that just curves off, has that flow of hair, and then starts to really just shoot out and do its own thing off to the right. Like so. Excellent. Maybe a little bit of shape in there just to show it's an ear. And then there are going to be all sorts of marks over here because he's fairly battle worn by the time he enters this technique. But we need to map out firstly all the other big zones. So we've got this great big barrel chest. Now if you go ahead and split this circle in half crossways as well, again slightly at a bit of a curve and an angle, this center point is going to be for us the center of the X scar on Luffy's chest. So you can use this center point to just draw a line that curves roughly around about here, almost like you're doing a Union Jack flag, and then roughly round about here. And that's going to be how we're going to map on the scar of his chest. We just know it's going to be there. And then right at the bottom here, I'm going to, about the center half of this circle, if you imagine we've ported it, we've got the center half of space. I'm just going to draw a great big thick belt line right along the bottom, which shows where his waist tucks back in. And then I'm just going to have a leg shoot off there and shoot off there at the bottom of the page. Maybe a tiny bit of gap just under there as well. And we'll just put in very quickly loads of kind of loose, very thin triangles just to show the folds of the material. It doesn't have to be in any particular way, but these kind of very loose abstract shapes just show that we've got these kind of pirate trousers all folded in, and then a few lumps around the outside edge to show all the creases as well. Excellent. So let's go back to the rest of this body then. Now he's got a very big flat-handed technique that's a little bit closer to the viewer over to the left. We're using his right arm, and it stops around about here. So I'm going to draw in firstly a very loose circle of where I want this hand to kind of be. It's kind of all round here like so. This circle will probably be most of his forearm as well, and then I'm going to just create a curving arc here like so, and that will be the palm of the hand, and then flatten ever so slightly I'll have the rest of the fingers up here. So with this palm shape, if we just create this to be a slightly more rectangular shape in the zone we've created, we've got this curve here, we've got this curve here that's working out okay. We're going to go up and around here. I'm going to go ahead and map out a thumb that's probably here, just drawing these big circular shapes, gentle circles, keeping it very loose is going to help you here. And that's thumb that has got a joint. It's got the big part on the palm where there's loads of shape here, and then maybe we've got the other half of the palm is a bit of a shape like this, and then we've got the lifeline, I think, or maybe this one's the lifeline, the center line that goes up here up to the middle. Now I'm going to split the top half in half with a line here and then quarter it, another line here and another line here, and this just tells us where the fingers are going to be. And I'm going to split the fingers into these 3 kind of big circular shapes. So I'm going to start at the end, and I'm going to go 1 for the joints of the fingers, then much shorter tucked behind 2 like so, and then 3 over this line here, and I'm going to keep doing the same thing even with the longer fingers. So starting much further up, got 1, 2, 3, and then fairly similar height a bit further back, 1, 2, 3, And then much shorter down here. 1, 2, 3. Make that a tiny bit bigger. That'll be the index finger. Lovely. So that kind of maps out where we've got the hand kind of pushing out towards us. This original circle shape, I'm going to keep most of this and let that be the forearm. We'll keep that about there. And then I'm going to get this to be another circular shape here for most of the front of the arm. And then we're going to join it on with a great big shoulder circle, just so that it fits up around this zone. So where we've got the head, we need to just show that this arm's meeting back in to the rest of this big body shape. I'm just going to draw another great big circle there, maybe a line or two to show the muscle. And then I'm just going to go down from this head, just map in a little bit of neck area as well, underneath the guidelines of this circle here, and also here. And then maybe just create a point that just comes in around about here to show that it's a neck meeting onto the body. So let's get this other arm in as well. This one is held back, kind of pulled back in a fist or a punch. So around about here on the page, we're going to map out again another big circular shape. This one's a bit easier because it's just a very large fist. Something like so maybe. It's much more of an ellipse. And this front part of this is going to be all of the folded fingers. So again, just going to map that in. Half, quarter, quarter is a really rough guiding point. And create one folded finger that comes around here and just tucks here. Just show that by a little notch. Another folded finger all the way around here. All the way around again. And then we've got our fourth one down here. And this fourth one is also going to have a thumb shape. So another kind of elliptical shape just tucked up there. And then we've just got the kind of shape of the hands there. And the palm as a lump there. So there's our pulled back hands. We've got that already. Then maybe just a great big kind of curve, a kind of sausage lump shape. It just shoots up towards the right. Doesn't have to go out far. That's going to be our forearm. And then we know that the rest of Luffy's arm is actually coming back in this way. This forearm I'm just going to show by splitting off a bit of muscle group from here and here. Maybe there as well. And this forearm is just going to drop back here with a bit of bicep or tricep. Just show a curve that comes out here. And then don't forget this great big shoulder circle again. Something that I can put up and around there just to show how everything's joined in. Then, now that we've got the arms out of the way, we get to come back to the main part of the body, and we're almost there. So just inside where the arms are, Luffy's got his kind of flower patterned shirt. So we're going to follow a very quick curve. It just shows he's wearing this shirt and the material's open and it's flapping in the wind. And this curving line, it's just going to come off, down and around about here. And then just curve it back and in. And then very similarly on the right as well. It's all tucked and pulled in here. So maybe we're going to come out and then right out of the body, just down and around a bit, give it a bit of curve, and then give the material some flap in the wind as well. So it's going to be out and around before it comes back up. We'll see the inside edge about there. Lovely. Now this material does have loads of flower patterns on it. So if you want, you can stop for a quick moment and just draw a whole load of circle shapes, just kind of almost polka dots, really big ones, quite evenly spaced as they go up the material, like so. And then maybe a few on this side here, out and around, coming up the material, like so. And each one of these circles, you can just put a quick 1-2 crisscross inside each one. 1-2 crisscross, 1-2 crisscross, 1-2 crisscross. Just to build up that pattern, and it's a lot of fun to put different patterns onto the clothes if you make your own character designs. And then now just go around the outside edge and give that some petals. Don't have to count off how many. Keep it rough. Worry about keeping it neat when you're doing the pen, but just create these simple sunflower motifs as a pattern. Out and around. Excellent, got that all on. So with the rest of him, he's got his haki technique, which is creating all these kind of black patterns on his skin. Now we've got this little point here where we've got the neck coming in. So let's go ahead and get a collarbone line that shoots down here as well. And then another collarbone line that goes off to the right there. And firstly, I'm just going to now map out the shape of this scar. Now I've got the X marks the spot. I'm also, oddly, going to do a kind of square right in the middle, like so. You can make it a circle if you want, but if you imagine we've got a square shape in the middle, and now I know that I get to just pattern a scar that kind of points off at the edges and then meets down at the square with a couple of bits as well. And it's just going to be our guiding point, up, out with a pattern, down here, again up and in, down to this point, and then up back on this side. Lovely. Now with this center line, we can turn this, following the center and vertical center lines and horizontal center lines. We can use this to kind of mark out his chest a bit, give him a great big chest right there. And then on the bottom part, in a fairly thin kind of column, we can just map out a few curves to show some stomach muscles. This probably going to come out and around like so, and then he gets a few lines as well to show the odd rib, even though he's quite elasticated in his rubber mode. Then this curve of a circle, this all works when it comes up and around, so we're happy with that. And then we just need to actually map on this pattern. So basically it's kind of like these curving black flames. If you imagine one comes down over the chest here, curves into a spiral. You can probably make any pattern you want if you want to keep the fun up. And then these black flames are kind of burning down as a design back in like a tribal tattoo, and then they kind of curve in and shoot off and around up to the scarring here, and then a few more flamey points come in here at the bottom and disappear off to the back. I think there's a line here where it's not dark as it reaches up, and then maybe a couple lines where it's not dark here and also here. And then very similar on the other side, I'm going to come down around about here, create these curves that sort of mirror what we've just done. Have lots of sort of flamey curving lines to show that it's all organic and kind of growing along his body as well, like so. And then we'll get another one that's got a curve on it there. This, and then out, then up and in. A few spikes down the side. Excellent, and we're essentially done. Now, what you can also do if you want to is just show the kind of wisps of smoke that are usually around when Luffy's doing this technique. I think it's in the middle of a fight and there's lots of steam that comes off of him when he goes into his Gear 4th mode. So you can just put a few wisps and shapes if you want to, if you're so inclined, around about here. And then maybe a couple wisps that sort of go off around about there. And I think there's another one that kind of comes over the top here and kind of wisps off and around. Depends how much you want to add. Mostly we're just focusing on the Luffy figure himself. He does have his belt sash kind of do this shooting off thing, so you can just throw a little cheeky shape in there as well if you want. This will all be in black. But that is basically it. Now, because there's so much haki going on around his arms, when I go to inking, watch very carefully, but you'll notice that every time I draw this line in ink, I'm going to draw another line right next to it, because all the middle will be black, and I'm going to create these tiny thin corridors, which are going to be in white. But I'm going to drop into time-lapse right now, put the inking layer on, and that'll make sense in just a moment. And there we go, a nice quick simple picture of Luffy from One Piece in his Gear 4th mode. Although to be fair, it's not the quickest one, and it's not the simplest and easiest one ever, but it is a lot of fun to have a go with at home. I'm going to scan this in and make this area a flesh tone. I think he's got a dark blue background to his sunflower shirt. And then all these areas, the reason why I've inked these out and then done a second line is so that all of these middle blocks of space are going to be either black or a very dark colour to represent his haki. Now, whenever you're doing kind of black characters or painting in an area that's very dark but still has detail, it's very useful to show all the edges and shapes by adding in some white outline instead. So I hope you guys have found this useful and had a go at home. You can always submit your art on my Facebook page, a link in the description below. But if you haven't already, click like, click subscribe to the channel, or go check out Patreon where your support makes this all possible and you get loads of artwork rewards as well. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. See you next time.